And we are back. Game 5 about to hit your screen, your monitor. So, troubling. I want to understand. I want
Discovering
to
stuff on my
understand what
monitor.
can we expect from this one because Astralis is going blue, JDXL is going red, Silas is going to be banned. Now, for real, I'm telling you, Silas will be banned. Yeah, the coaches will
Uh,
understand that.
Actually, I think if anything, XL might ban it from right side because they don't want to give it over to
Mhm.
Senkax. I think if Salah stays open, it's going to be most likely a B1 from the side of Astralis. Senkax, one of his favorite champions as well, really good at the champ. But I think it's priority taking it away from Roscu, maybe forcing him into something like the Yone, like the Akali, who we've seen the matchup of as well, played over in summer of the NLC, and it didn't go that well for Roscu. So maybe pushing him into option B or C might favor Astralis right here. I think Senkax dictates whether Astralis are going to win or lose the game. So getting him onto something that he can dictate that early game with is very important.
Jamada, jump in on this one as well because we need all the knowledge we can get. I
I'm
understand.
I'm in line with trouble here.
Yeah, same.
As much as I would actually like to add some kind of contradictory point to what she just said,
Uh
just for the
huh.
sake of, broadcast, content.
Thanks, guys.
Trouble's just right. I
It's the
agree
article.
with her.
She knows. She
Yeah.
Well,
just
I
knows.
was born a woman. It comes with a kit.
So I you've killed him. You see what you've done, Trouble, you've killed him. Look, but yeah, no. I think, realistically, we're gonna look towards now
Good
the mid
rebound.
lane. I think, yeah, and breathe out. Um, he's trying so hard not to laugh. Look at him. Look at him.
That's
He's gonna
fine.
break. He's gonna
It's fine.
break. He's getting redder. Look at his face. He cannot hold it in.
We're
He
about
held
to
it in.
jump into
Very
Continue.
pick and
interesting.
ban. We're about to jump into the last pick and ban of the night, ladies and gentlemen. Astralis 2, JDXL 2. Lovely mug, by the way. We have Caitlyn being removed. We're still waiting for the Emmerdinger. We're still waiting for that Silas, probably from the JDXL side, and Aatrox as well, probably into the top side.
The question is just the Silas, isn't it? Like, will it be banned away
Yeah.
from the JDXL side because they anticipate this swap up from Astralis? It's Astralis that ban it away because they're not thinking they can realistically B1 it. So it's off the table now. What are the mid lane priorities for Morozku? Is it going to be things like the Akali early on or in the first three, or will they actually look to go towards something a little more traditional?
I just feel like what this says here from the side of Astralis is we do value our Varus a lot because it creates
Ooh.
space, it gives us engage. Crispec's really keen on it as well. But we know that Senkax has a huge champion pool compared to Moscow. So just simply banning out the Silas, B1ing the Varus right here might actually be huge for them unless Carlson feels like he wants to B1 something like the Aatrox here. But they banned the Nami themselves. Swain on the other side, things like Hammerdinger are open. Lucian Nami no longer available because Nami's banned. So you have Aatrox, you have Varus, and you have Heimerdinger.
Yep, I think that's the power trio as well, Trouble. That's more about what Astralis really prioritized the highest, right? I think if you go towards the Aatrox, Kryze is going to have an answer. If you go towards the Heimerdinger, or rather, go towards the other pick, which is now lost in my mind, the Varus, there's less answers, but the Sejuani's
Hold
made
on,
it
that was
through.
Hammer
First time
So,
open.
yeah, it's for the first time the entire series. So now, what is JDXL's answer to this Sejuani? Because it's the first time we've seen it all series long.
So, okay, I'm gonna say this. I don't believe in EU Fiora, but I believe Fiora in the early stages is very strong with Sejuani. If Sejuani
Yeah.
runs you over, she has ways of actually running you over in the later stages of the game as well. We've seen it happen over at EU Masters 2, like the Gangplank, way more than the Fiora, because it eliminates pressure in the bot side of the map as well. You can have cross-map pressure, you can have pressure when the opponent team chooses immobile champions, which will most likely force Crispec and Senkax on something that's more mobile around the map. My eyes for possibly something like Ella Blanc, who for the first time is not banned versus Senkax, or an Akali.
Yeah, and I really like this as well from JDXL. They go towards the Gangplank, so now Sejuani's already going to have kind of one matchup she's not comfortable in. You pick up the Callista, so you can have that strong bottom side with the Gangplank to
It's
facilitate it once you hit level 6. If you go Aatrox, I'm going to be honest, skilled Gangplank players like Kryze will run this matchup over. But we have seen Carlson kind of have a lot of success into the Gangplank. This Akali, a flex, which can go towards the top side and the mid lane, something I would imagine would be under Carlson's wheelhouse considering his champion pool. And that has a pretty good time into the Gangplank 1-to-1. So curious to see where that will end up going. But I think now you have to answer the AD pool.
Also, in the second rotation of Buzz Astralis in the previous game, they banned Javan. So if they were
Yeah.
scared of Javan, now they're not. They already have 2 dashes on the Sejuani and on the Akali. They know they're going to have to get even more dashes. And that was the JDXL special where they smashed lane width. And now you have 2 melee champions that can proc that stun really quickly. The passive really quickly onto the Sejuani so you can get the stun over. Reminder, when Dan and Cries were playing the Tryndamere X whatever ganking jungler, they absolutely destroyed Riddle's top lane, which was playing Gangplank. So I feel right here, Dan needs an extremely strong skirmishing jungler to eliminate that pressure.
But they also need AP damage in their profile now, because I think they're probably going to be dealing with at least 2 tanks. And if they're able to just free stack armor, it might be a bit of a problem with these champions towards the later stages of the game. I'm looking at something like potentially a Lilia is what's on my mind. When you have a Yone, the skirmishing power at 6, you could probably outdo an Akali Sejuani in my mind.
I'm thinking of something else and I'm not really liking it. Something like the Karthus.
Oh, some Karthus, man!
But this is like,
some
this is like
Karthus
an
gaming!
That's AP Graves, and I don't like it
Yeah.
because we saw how JDXL were able to actually work so much better when Dan was creating the engages. And right here, sort of like jailing him on Karthus for the sake of it could be problematic. I don't necessarily mind the full AD composition coming in from the side of JDXL. Unless you want to slot in something like even a Maokai that has gone completely under the radar this series.
True, a lot of mobility here between the 3 champions on Astralis' side right now. And if Chris Berg decides to go to something
Point
a
and
little
click.
more self-sufficient and peely, then yeah, honestly, the Maokai could fit really well. I'm going to sell you guys a Bible real quick, because I've just seen the angle for it. Kayn isn't too bad here. And I know Dan might be a bit of an enjoyer in his free time. And so is Torok. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think you can kind of get away with it in the sense here, but I think you would probably need, again, you want to split up the damage profile in my mind. Astralis is kind of pinning down the most easy picks to go for, so I'm kind of struggling for Dan. Go on, Chop.
I got you.
Is it Zach? Is it Zach?
Nocturne.
Nocturne. Ooh.
Oh, the AG. Double down
Turn
the AD.
the lights off. Turn the lights off. Focus towards the side lane. Tryndamere always overextend. They always overpush. This is what a Tryndamere does on the map. But that, yes. Sorry, I just got it.
That makes sense. Tarek was talking about this in Summer's play. Dan has played this before. He's a menace. He can gank from any side in the map if he has the vision for that one as soon as he gets the elastic slingshot.
You're right. He's played AP Shyvana too. That would be an option. Something like a Diana would also be an option.
Yeah. So there's a lot for him. Another close range champion jumping into the frail, and Chris Berg has been popping off with the Kai'Sa, but this is the first time today, which is why I'm really excited with that one. What do you pair this with? You bring in the Karma to get that wave clear in Rome?
I mean, options are kind of...
I'd say Nautilus here would be the best option.
I
'cause
thought
you
the
can
Nautilus
lock
actually
down
has the
that
same.
Kalista, but on the other hand side, I really hope FTG locks in something like his Taric here. I think they're gonna need it. They've got many squishes. You can dive with the ultimate really deep and get out unscathed in JDXL as well. And honestly, I don't think you need the Soraka at this point. You have so much survivability with your champions, so much healing with the champions.
Oh.
Taric is just chef's kiss right here.
It's locked in. We got the Tarek as well. You've been promising that one the entire night, and finally get to see him on game 5. Jamara, give me your last prediction of the night. Drop a link, I'll toss it to you after.
I think that this Taric is a massive spanner in the works for Astralis' team composition. I actually think it's potentially game-breaking if it doesn't fall miles behind. And honestly, in that matchup, I feel like they should be fine in the 2v2. Dan has lanes which can get him to a point where he's freely able to gank these lanes too. So honestly, XL, same thing as last game. Team fighting options to actually stand up to Astralis. And I feel like Astralis, again, you've got 2 flankers, 2 kind of mostly single damage target dealers, assassins effectively, against a full might team fighting composition. I think they're going to struggle in the 5v5, so they have to get ahead in these solo lanes for me with that Sejuani.
I'm getting really bad flashbacks from the last time we saw Dan playing that Zac. there was a different mid laner playing from XL. And that was his last game with the team, if I'm not wrong. So I'm getting really bad flashbacks from this. It didn't affect the Zac performance whatsoever, but I think I really like what XL has. But on the other hand, Astralis want to skill check you, and I feel like the top side of their map is extremely strong, and their bot side of the map is extremely I'm losing my word right here.
Long day. It's been a long day.
No, they're very good on their own down the bot lane. So I feel like as long as Taxa plays around Senkax and plays around Carlson, as long as they give XL the treatment that they give others when they play the Trim the Me, then I think Astralis are gonna be fine.
It's gonna be interesting. It's the best of 5 in
Independent.
all side and
Independent
on
bot lane.
the 5th game of the night. Today we finally know the first finalists of Aurora Open. So without further ado, let's toss it to the Summoner's Rift, where we got the bird's eye view with Middlecott and Nightmare. Take it away, boys.
Ow! What happened to my human eyes? I've got bird eyes now. Well, we got game 5 as well, Middlecott.
Oh, I'm so excited. For the final time, we can welcome you onto the Rift for Astralis Talent versus JDXL, a series that has delivered in so many ways over the past few hours, but it's not going to matter to either of those teams if they lose in this final
And
game,
you know
if they miss out on a spot in the
right
final.
now is Keeper is belly slammed over the wall, and Dan is going to get caught.
Still has the flash available, plus the cell division, but just a little bit of poke, a little bit of harassment onto JDXL's jungler. Vision also established in the top side. As, of course, we
My
could
human
jump
eyes are
into
back.
the game. Whoa, oh,
The back, crazy.
wow.
I just had
wow.
like 2 surgeries in like 20 seconds. It's
Bird nose is
weird
still
over
there.
here. Yeah. Anyway, like, that's it. It's been a long day.
It
Like,
has. It has.
I was already starting to like fray a little bit up on the neurons up there. It's only made it worse with time. But we have now got a glorified best of 1 between 2 of our Div 1 teams, semifinals of the Aurora Open. And for one of these teams, after this game, it's off season for them. That's it. You know, your track record of everything that you've done this year is into the books. You don't get a say after that point. If you really want to leave with just an extra bit of positive impression, now is the time to put up or shut up.
I tell you what, both teams are putting up thus far. And we've had some interesting adaptations in the draft for the final game. It's usually JDXL that are a bit more willing to pull out the weird, the wacky, and the wonderful, occasionally the woeful, but Astralis here, a Tryndamere for Carlson versus Kreis, who's infamous for his ability to pilot the Barbarian in the top lane. It's going to be such an interesting matchup to see.
And JDXL, no strangers to playing around Tryndamere matchups in the top side. Dan, one of his very best games was in the #1 versus #2 clash from summer, when it was GP versus Tryndamere against Riddle. And Dan ganked that lane once for the Tryndamere, and the game just ended after that point. I'm really looking at these junglers to say, all right, solo laners have been flip-flopping across the board in terms of their laning advantage. You have one last chance now to really give them a leg up on their opponents in both very volatile matchups.
And for Dan, he's on a ganker. He's on something that can enable, that can snowball these lanes. It's not the Graves who's going to be power farming and picking up kills here and there. Once you get to level 5 on the Zac, when that elastic slingshot range is absolutely ridiculous, you can jump into these lanes, start burning summoners and burning health bars.
Yeah, but of course, Strauss will try and give him as hard a time on that as possible. Lots of ways to disengage from that dash as well. You have the Sejuani Arctic Assault, you Q forwards, and potentially that's something, but this top lane gank, which we were worried about, burns a flash. And look at that wave positioning. That is not a happy GP.
Yeah, this is going to slowly push back into Carlson, and it's so difficult for the GP to contest in these matchups. Tryndamere loves these long lanes with the Ghost where he can run you down. And Kreis is maybe going to be demanding a little bit of help from Dan, but he's on the wrong side of the rift right now.
Yeah, he was up there very early, maybe looking for even earlier gank, level 2, a buff into top. Of course, Sejuani not the best at doing that, but Dan, yeah, he's pathing towards this bot side, which he has done pretty much the whole series. Kreis has been playing with less resources, and for most of this tournament, that has worked out wonders for JDXL. Kreis has performed above and beyond the resources he's been given, above the matchup he's been drafted, but against Carlson, Carlson has been his match, arguably been his better this series. That last game, of course, that GP was incredibly powerful, and in the first game as well. course, Daytrox had a heck of an impact, but still, Carlson really putting down some performances to be proud of as this, again, this young rookie year top laner for Astralis.
It's so great to see. I think the future is very bright for Carlson, regardless of the outcome of this game. Taxa once again visiting towards the top side, but you see on the minimap, Dan is there to respond if they want to make a play onto the Sejuani.
And the wave is, that's a frozen wave. You have +4 minions on the side of JDXL, which means that will permanently hold itself there if it is not shoved in. Dan cries there to make sure that does happen. And again, you can see both these junglers, they understand how important this top lane matchup is. You look at this matchup, we know what's happened with this matchup before within the NLC. If you get one kill in this lane, it just absolutely messes up. You cannot do anything about that as an individual laner. So the jungler's very aware of that, protecting them. Putting cotton wool around their various laners and trying to give them the best platform they can in this final game.
But with that additional pressure and, I guess, emphasis placed on the top lane, it's allowed Venza on this Kalista to build up a pretty substantial CS lead in the bottom lane already. And this is something that the Kai'Sa can do. She can assert herself in lanes. Well, the Kalista can assert herself in lane versus the Kai'Sa. But this pairing, the Kalista, the Taric, this was the combo that got JDXL a pentakill at EU Masters play-ins versus Svernes Vesta. We know how good Venza is on this champion.
But playing around Kalista Taric proactively is the way to do it. Playing around it defensively against a very bursty combo, Sejuani ult coming in, Gragas ult coming in. If you have to use it in a very snap defensive manner, expect someone to die all the same. It's very hard to use it defensively if you don't see the combo coming. You need to use it proactively. And to use it proactively, you need Dan and you need Morozku to really be on the board. This is a whole team affair. Kalista is a team-based champion. Taric is as well. JDXL, if you've had anything to show for your lessons in integration, dealing with roster changes, dealing with learning how to play the game again, this is a heck of a composition to work that out with. Astralis on the other side, also changing expectations from what we've known of them, putting a lot of responsibility onto Carlson, onto this top lane to play in a carry matchup versus one of the very best the NLC has to offer.
And I mean, he's already got a couple of solo kills this series onto the very best that the NLC can offer, and dodging away from the barrels there. Just
really good back steps, actually. Just
really
making sure it's like, oh, am I going to go up and auto it? No, I'm not. I'm going to step out of range of it and just make sure he's not taking harder trades than he needs to. Of course, that matters all the more going later into the game when those barrels get far too much damage for my liking. But we'll have to see how that goes and how much help he can get with that too. Sankux, Carlson both have side laning options this game, actually.
They can both move towards it if they like to. As leave on the well, not picture-in-picture, the mini-map. Dan has started up the Drake. I'm getting a little bit too excited, you know. And Taxa is also around the bottom side of the Rift. JDXL, they're not going to spot up this gank if Taxa wants to go for this.
He's gone onto him.
Venza kiting back, is stunned. The flash body slam from Kiba lands onto 2. Ultimate invested from Cries, but it's first blood for Astralis. Dan diving in, gets the double pullback as Chrisberg drops to FGG. Senkux with the first rotate over, and Dan forced to flash away.
Ends up in a 1-for-1. Both AD carries die. Cries does get himself an assist on this, so that's something towards that topside matchup. He's even built himself up a Warden's Mail for the early laning advantage against that, of course, AD auto attacker on that top side, just making sure that he's able to survive in that matchup. But without TP, without that Cannon Barrage as well, really wondering now, even though that bot side play was somewhat even, whether Astralis can actually look to make a play topside and again affect this very volatile 1v1 matchup. Bot lane as well, not in a great wave state. After all is said and done, it's an even play in terms of the gold put through. I think Astralis walk away with more opportunities awaiting them, though.
It's difficult, but crucially, Venza still has access to both of his summoner spells. So once he hits level 6, if he wants to go for a bit of a skirmish onto Chrisberg, a bit of aggressive play in the bot lane, which it's Venza, he's probably going to. He's got additional tools if he wants to do that.
Yeah, so really looking for the fallout of this. Resources used, Cries, no ultimate, no TP on that top side. If he dies, he has no way to fix his lane state. That's why you can see 8 minutes reached. Herald on top side, obviously available there too, but the wave crashing into tower. As Cries is safe for now. We are, again, just waiting for the next big play to be made.
FGG taking a little bit of damage. Maybe Astralis felt like they could go towards that one, but It's Carlson, once again, building up a CS lead against Cries in the top half of the Rift. It's been quite an exceptional performance from this young lad who didn't really have too many expectations placed on him coming into this series. We talked at length about how great this year has been for him, the improvement from spring to summer, and that's continued through this Aurora Open. And if you can get a win up against JDXL, who have been this Goliath within the NLC region for so long, before it was even the NLC, I think that is definitely something you can be proud of putting on your CV.
Yeah, even with the struggles of recent times for JDXL, it's never a small feat taking down this roster. But now, again, in that Game 5, looking at a date in the finals with the team winning on the other side of the bracket. The best of 5 will be coming up very shortly after this one in the next few days. And absolutely keep your eyes peeled for that one, particularly with the likes of Dusty, full roster, NLC champions on the other side of the bracket. You really have to be aware of what's coming in there. But these teams focused on the here and now, focused on the bot lane right now, 3v3. Interactive bot lanes does lend itself to a bit of jungle attention.
And diving in onto Kiba, but the engage not really there for JDXL as they force back Astralis. And this series has had a lot of these sort of cagey early games. The first 10 minutes hasn't tended to really give a massive indication about who's going to win the game. It's really in sort of like the next 5 to 7 minutes that we've seen those advantages build.
But you can call it cagey, and I think that's very much part of the identity of it. But I also think the other thing is actually just it shows an understanding, particularly from both junglers, about, again, where the next play is being made. They are really in each other's heads, really just trying to outthink the other jungler, and they've had the better of each other in different amounts this series. I think particularly Game 1, Dan had an excellent Graves performance. Games 2 and 3, when Astralis took those victories, a lot of that was off the back of Taxa setting up Senkux for success, blowing Rozgu's flash, and Dan didn't have anything to say about it. In Game 5, both on later game teamfight initiating junglers, they've been trying to just make sure that their lanes can survive, they can get through to relevancy. It has meant that these players have been more neutralized, and really those huge explosive plays we saw earlier in the series.
So before we get to those huge explosive plays, I kind of want to pick your brains here. What does a good sort of game state look like for Astralis? What does a good game state look like for JDXL as we continue to crest over time, as we get closer and closer to the inevitability of one of these nexuses falling and one of these teams going home?
I think a good game state for Astralis, largely, it's, I think, at an individual level, it's on Carlson having a leg up on the Gangplank matchup. I think that's something which JDXL will find very hard to respond to on a side lane. And a secondary part for them is also being able to use their Sejuani ult proactively to try and trade it for the Tarakult. I think if ever JDXL have to use their Tarakult defensively, they're in a bit of trouble at that point. You do have other things you can use, of course, counter-engage from the Zac flying in over the top when you've hit another target, or of course the Cholesterol pulling out the Taric at some point. That's also very, very dangerous. But if you can ever get rid of that Tarakult, it just gives you so much more room to maneuver. The first part of this, though, was the side lane advantage. They're trying to find it onto Gangplank.
They are diving onto Cries. The stun hasn't been proc yet, as Carlson is going to use that ultimate and continue to chase down with the autos. A flash away from Cries. He's looking for a solo kill in the 1v2, and he gets it onto Carlson. The veteran top laner takes down the young apprentice.
You want to lead over my dead body. He takes one down with him. Carlson doesn't get the kill, doesn't get the reward he wanted to from that play. Cries outplays that just about as well as you want to. Gets a flash, gets 2 ultimates, gets a ghost, and he only expends his ult in return. I think that is absolutely a win for JDXL's star top laner.
And because Astralis were applying that pressure on the top side of the Rift, Dan could move down into the bot lane and start to steal away some of these camps and apply some pressure to Chrisberg and Kiba. Chrisberg is down 30 CS at this moment in time on the Kaiser, and a couple of plates have also gone into Venza's hands. So JDXL finding advantages on both sides of the map as it stands, and they may look for even more.
Yeah, and when you commit resources onto one side of the map, you don't actually get a clean... Oh, Rozgu! Oh my gosh. Top lane has started off proceedings. Mid lane soon to follow. Herald in tow, though. This, oh my gosh, it is everywhere. Engage in the bot side jungle.
Everything, everywhere, all at once. Chrisberg is dead, and Kiba will follow him into the death chamber. A kill for Venza, crucial. That's going to free up some more time on all of these towers here for JDXL.
But with all of this, the balance of the map starts to break. Suddenly you have less gold onto Kaiser, who doesn't have access to these waves. Cries is left alone with a top wave, who is already doing fine for himself. And the aggressive attempt that Astralis had in the mid lane doesn't lead to anything. These games have very much been about your solo lane, small advantages, becoming uncontrollable as the game goes on. And JDXL, for the first time in a little while in this series, find themselves at the advantage early on.
And it's on picks that they know what to do with. Cry's GP legendary, Venza, Kalista legendary, even Mrozq here. 15 CS up in the mid lane on the One, a champion that we've seen in the teaser, in the hype video for this series, that he can do absolutely disgusting
He was at EU Masters in
things on.
spring and took wins off of some of the best teams in the ERLs on his Yone. It was a difficult EU Masters for his team in spring, but even then, even back then, he was putting out some incredible results on that champion. Cry's going to have his recall stop, but again, he's built up this early laning ward as well. You can see how much it does for the trading. Just gets to walk down with the extra movement speed from the Hearthbound axe as well, and just make sure Carlson doesn't take freebie trades.
And he's not even at a completed item yet, but Cry's has already got the run of this lane. Astralis are able to take down the first tower in the mid lane, so that's a little bit of additional gold in their pockets, but they are still down 1,500 gold, and Venza's going to be able to trade it for a tower on the bottom half of the rift.
Yeah, so that is going to be some local gold over to Senkux. It probably was shared between a couple of people. Actually, I'm not sure exactly who's into it, whether CRISPR got a hold of that too, but I am now looking at Senkux. Started the series on the Akali, will end the series on the Akali. You're not in the same level of individual lead you had in that game one, and we said, oh, you got to spread your lead around the map, save the rest of it. You got to make those plays yourself now, son. You got to be able to make sure some of those side lane plays work out for you, because this is not an easy game to impact. You're going to have to play out of your goddamn mind to go up against Cry's GP, which is already becoming a threat. Several 100 gold ahead on this top side of the map, and Mrozq as well. Still up in CS2, really looking at Carlson and Senkux to make individual plays, to give Astralis something to look towards.
Yeah, and it had to be that way, right? The old man in the mid lane, the guy that has kind of been there, seen it all, and Carlson, fresh-faced, the young prospect who has an incredible future ahead of him. They need to make it happen in this game. The gold lead's starting to shrink. It's not getting out of control for Astralis just yet, but JDXL, they may look to change that fact as Chrisberg jumped onto in the mid lane. The CC chain is absolutely disgusting, rendered and removed from the rift. Kiba now running to the wrong side of the rift, but will not be chased down. A pick for JDXL, pressure in the mid lane.
Oh gosh, and this mid lane play, the one that we're saying actually gets a little bit awkward. Senkux, one of these plays, can he find the E? Doesn't quite. Trying to find something for his team somewhere. The mid lane play failing. They look for that Sejuani ult that we talked about, the one that maybe forces the Taric ult defensively. Not only does it not force the Taric ult defensively, it doesn't force it at all. They lose kills on that too. They're starting to fall further and further behind, but they are still obligated to make these plays because it doesn't get much easier from this point. I mean, maybe you can wait until you get certain item breakpoints on someone like your Akali to try and take down the armor building GP in the side lane, or Mrozq if he oversteps as he almost did there, but it is not an easy waiting game. Not when you're bleeding CS out in AD carry, you're bleeding CS out in your mid lane too, as Mrozq is taken to the side lane. Astralis, they are left with difficult decisions.
And those assignments are so difficult to land because, yeah, if you get Senkux against Cry's, maybe something can happen, but Mrozq is continuing to build this lead, and the Yone is a notorious skirmisher on the sideline. Was also briefly 2 levels up on Senkux, and what a change from the story of this mid lane from the beginning of the series. It was Senkux dominating, taking control, forcing Mrozq back, but now on his comfort champions, this young Polish mid laner. It was the Silas in the previous game. It's the Yone in this game, making things happen.
Yeah, and you know, Mrozq is a player that needed to step up. When he came into JDXL, emergency call-up when the roster changes happened, he had an awful lot to learn, and at EU Masters, he was often exploited for not linking up with Dan or FGG, not knowing what to do with his lane in the mid lane. For him to step up in Game 5, after that Game 4 performance as well, I think that is such a step for this player. We mentioned it for Carlson, probably the most improved player across the NLC, particularly in regards to how he can play as a holistic player, not just as a player that plays in good matchups with resources. Mrozq really, again, showing what he's learned, showing what he's put to the test here, and now JDXL with the advantage is not out of sight yet, but with an advantage enough to give them some serious hopes of winning this series.
It's moving in the right direction, which is a far cry from what this series looked like.
Dan is moving across mid lane very fast.
Very quickly, and they may actually
we've
be
got to
looking
talk about
to...
it at some point. He's reached level 10 now. He's got his maxed out ballistic slingshot. He will be an orbital missile of goo heading towards Astralis should they overstep. And this is the point of power where the Zac is really powerful, actually. One item, before everyone has huge amounts of items to burn down the Zac, and his passive means next to nothing. This is the point of power for Dan, and he's reached it fairly calmly. And he's going to have a much easier time of engaging. Look what he's doing here, just using that point of power, holding Astralis to account.
Well, it may not just be using the point of power. It may be a kill on Takiba, forced to invest the explosive cast defensively, but Dan predicts the dash, and FGG gets the kill.
Point of power for the Zac, long range engage, max out on that orbital elastic slingshot, flies in from the ether and takes Kiba into the abyss. Gragas goes down, and now you don't have your disengage, you don't have your support to hold up your vision line, to hold up your support. It's not going to lead to a mid tower being taken. I thought maybe that was going to be the angle from JDXL, but they instead choose to go back to their own side of the jungle, spend their gold, get ready for the Infernal Dragon coming up in a minute. Of course, they've already got the 2 early dragons. Makes it all the more important, getting to Infernal Soul Point on a composition which already has scaling options. Astralis don't have the option of waiting and seeing at that point. They already tried to kind of find themselves that lucky engage, thread the needle with the Sejuani ult in the mid lane, but it did not work out for them. But it's going to be, again, just very difficult decision-making process for Astralis. How do they navigate the next few minutes? This dragon, they're going to get at least some vision into this river, but do they have the stats to even take it to JDXL? I would posit no.
It's difficult, right? You can see angles, right? If you get the godlike cask, if you get a glacial prison onto someone squishy and burn them down, then maybe there's an angle there. But the Taric ultimate could be so key in these engagements. OzQ, very aggressive teleport in the mid lane. 20 seconds until the Drake spawns.
20 seconds. Christ, still up in the top side. Dan caught out, has his passive, has the item, but does take a lot of damage.
That's a CC chain and a half. Senkux looking for the JDXL jungler, but with that chunk, Astralis are emboldened around the dragon. Rise walking down.
Yeah, that's a big mistake. Dan takes most of his HP bar for no reason. Doesn't have FGG in range, doesn't have any follow-up. Now he's gonna have to sit there on solo HP, looking for a way into this fight.
Oh, the Drake doesn't go down fast enough for Astralis as they dive forward. Venza is being forced away but can make a play onto Chrisberg. It's Astralis who secure the Drake. No soul point for JDXL, but if they gain a load of kills here, it may not matter. Roscu is shut down and FGG can't do anything in this fight. He can't help his team out as Christ is being soloed by Carlson on the other side. Astralis in a dire spot. Find a fight.
They find such an important chunk of HP onto Dan. It sets back JDXL's entire objective approach. Astralis, they did it in that game. They were so far behind in just before to force JDXL into their own difficulties. But in this one, Dan just way too far up, and you can see that he's not there starting the fight. Astralis, they can control over the objective pit, but because they have to approach in such a different manner, things get way too split for them. Venza isn't hitting the solo laners, not meaning that this Tryndamere, this Akali have to use their mobility defensively, use it non-optimally. And while there are some kills traded back, I mean, Astralis get themselves the dragon, they get themselves a whole host of kills. That is a godsend for Astralis.
The gold, the kills, that's good. But Taxa flashing back into the pit to make sure that JDXL can't get to Soul Point was key. Even if the goal goes over and JDXL still lose that fight, having that advantage on their back is so crucial. Hold on, Astralis, really right. 22.5 minutes starting up the Baron. JDXL, they don't know.
Okay, so there's no Zac passive this time. He's gonna check in and he sees it. Who can get there in time? Venza not going to be there. Are we flipping in game 5? Are we flipping for a place in the finals? Astralis keeping it leash, but erring on the side of caution. I was ready to see this entire series flipped on a dime. Not just yet.
JDXL though. They take the time that Astralis invested into that Baron and they turn it into a mid lane tower so they can start to move a little bit further forward, and the game slowed down, as game 5 so often do. Neither team in a position where they want to overstep, neither team wanting to make the mistake that could end their tournament lives. That final just around the corner, so tantalizingly close. And yet out of reach, Kiba now being jumped onto by Dan. Carlson here for Astralis in the top side as well. But JDXL can't find anyone, and now they turn towards the purple worm.
Okay, and they have the Terracult. The Terracult is the single most important thing to keep your eyes on here. How much value do JDXL get out of it? They're in the pit, but they are fish in a barrel.
Yeah, fish in a barrel as they get the Baron, but the cast is absolutely huge. Terrac Ultimate comes through and Kiba is dead. Carlson in an undying rage, but you can't kill anyone on JDXL. A shutdown secured, and Astralis are turning around Setcox with so much damage in the pit. So many kills, a triple for Chrisberg as Moscow forced to run away. Setcox flashing with the 5-point strike, and the mid laner for JDXL will be the final kill in the fight for Astralis as they secure the ace in game 5.
If JDXL with the fish in a barrel, Astralis have brought a shotgun. They slam them into the ground. Baron is dead, but Astralis make sure that none walk away to bear its mantle.
Oh my word. JDXL, they thought they had it. They had the Baron secured. All they needed to do, get out of the pit, but it wasn't possible.
And I thought the Terracult was going to be enough, because you look at the HP when they hit it, and there's a lot of damage being done to Astralis while it's active. But it doesn't actually stop any of the burst damage. Senkok's is like, it's not the thing you think about, but a 4-mana Kali Q on that, onto everyone in that pit was so impactful. Several of them coming through, and Chrisberg untouched. As much as JDXL could disengage for a little while with that ultimate, Astralis bide their time and guts JDXL.
And the game is all but even now. That slight gold advantage for JDXL. Well, even more slight now as that tower falls in the bottom lane, and Astralis giving as good as they got. This is what a game 5 should be. 40 seconds until the Drake.
Once again, gold shutdowns, denying JDXL their own advantages. JDXL don't even have the sole point to play towards now, and this is actually tied. Chrisberg through 2, Blade of the Ruin King, plus that Rage Knife as well on top of the Kraken Slay. This is the on-hit Kai'Sa. If you let them go untouched in a team fight, your HP bars absolutely shred. It's less bursty than the traditional Kai'Sa, but the DPS does go through the roof. Not that JDXL are shy of their own DPS as well. Callista at 3 items, Cries with a Frozen Heart to make himself that much harder to kill as a dive target themselves. But JDXL need to be very wary. They've had their approach stunted at the last Dragon. They're not on the objective the first time here either. How do they problem solve their way into this? They failed the last time.
Slowly moving forward, the cast just for a little bit disengaged, but honestly, not too impactful. Dan is absolutely miles away from the pit now. There is no chance of a smite steal in JDXL.
They give it up.
Don't want to risk it all. They give it up.
They give it up. And serious credit to Astralis for really forcing JDXL to have a lot of difficulties in how they're approaching objectives. That last Dragon, the one before this one, really good example. Taking a chunk out of the jungle, saying, all right, okay, now you can't engage with impunity. Your main engage, that's down. In this one, now they have enough items to threaten the first person into the fight. A lot of this is going to be determined on how FGG can use that ultimate aggressively, but it has to be on Morozki or Dan being the vector for that, carrying that invulnerability forward and to increase their own threat onto the backline. But Astralis, they have recognized that and they have stopped JDXL from getting the value they want to out of it.
Level 16 now from Morozki on the Yone. Max rank on the Fate Sealed, a stopwatch in his pocket as well. The ability to buy a little bit more time in these fights can be crucial. The focus that can come through onto a stopwatch target is, it's lost games, it's lost series, it's lost championships in the past. It could be such a crucial cooldown, but Astralis now, with those 2 Drakes in their pocket, additional AP, additional AD, additional damage, when you've got stuff like a Tryndamere and a Kali, a Kai'Sa, so incredibly valuable.
Absolutely so. JDXL still managing to keep a fair amount of vision in the river. It's not uncontested this time, though. You can see that Astralis, from the victories they've had, they found some ways there, but Chrisberg dodges away.
Oh, and Dan can't find the engage. Somehow the ultimate lands from Taxa onto Venza, who still goes forward on the Callista. The explosive cast splits up the fight for JDXL and disengages it for Astralis. They're still moving forward. Carlson moving over on the side. Not going to find too much access.
Yeah, but that's not a great Terracult ultimate yet again, and now that is down. Now JDXL seriously struggle to keep up that same level of pressure they can put on the map. You can see them, again, poking their heads into the river, looking around mid lane. You can't do that without Terracult ultimate, and that one Venza jumping very far forward, being aggressive as we know this player can be, but didn't have the backup, didn't have the invulnerability on top of that to capitalize. And at this point, Crispo, a little difficult to lock down with the Zac. With the amount of move speed coming in from that supercharger, from that Eva Taxa. Just walking forward. Now JDXL, they just have to take a step back. They just cannot play as aggressively as they used to.
Every time two champions get within 700 units of each other, you hold your breath, because the engage potential is there for both of these teams. The ability to capitalize on someone overextended in an instant is there, and there's a hell of a lot of damage to back it up as well.
Yeah, even Dan going towards demonic embrace on the Zac. Now you do see this sometimes on the Zac, but it's a difficult decision, because one of the things that Desk were talking about when it came into those last couple of picks 4 and 5, is okay, you pick double AD solo laners and you've had a lot of AP junglers banned away. Where's your magic damage coming in from? Now they did pick that Zac. Zac has a lot of base damage, but you also have to survive the engage too. It does, again, put this extra burden onto JDXL to coordinate that tower call. It's not just an FDG, it's a team call, right? Someone has to call when they're going in, but if you don't have that at the right time, Dan is going to melt. One tank item is not enough versus a 3.5 item Kai'Sa. It is not enough versus Barrel. Well, I mean, not for Barrels, it's on his own team, but it's not enough for the amount of items built up by Astralis' damage at this point. Baron started again, forcing the hand of JDXL this time. Astralis clawed their way back into the game, clawed their way onto the Baron.
Oh, and the interrupt on the elastic slingshot will secure it for Astralis as Eva potentially caught out here. Crisis going forward, but another interrupt onto the Zac. Taxa, though, taken low himself as JDXL are still going forward. Astralis, 5 wearing purple. It's going to stay that way. JDXL can't quite find them.
Oh, Dan going in again.
Ah, but he's exploded. He's on his own. Drops into the passive, but here comes Cries, here comes Roscu. The solo laners from JDXL find a kill onto Kiba. But it's just a single pick. It's just one kill. And with the Baron buff at their backs, Astralis can push forward the gold. Dead even.
It's dead even, and Astralis, even though they are going to have their resets delayed, they have empowered recalls, they have home guards, they're going to be back on the map, and they can control these waves in time for that timer in the top left-hand corner of your screen. The Dragon up in 40 seconds. It's not going to be Soul's claimed by either of these teams, but Soul Point, potential for either of them. Astralis more than happy to snap that one up, and they are continually now making JDXL march to the beat of their drum. JDXL, they haven't had a successive aggressive play in quite a long time now. Get one pick at the end of that Baron, but that is shades of what they need to walk away with a victory.
Team for the UK, currently the ones with the pressure around that Drake pit, though. Astralis will be more than happy to walk in, more than happy to contest them at this place. Dan, jump over the wall. Drake already being started up.
Finally on the Dragon first. They have their approach, but they're cut off. They're flanked.
Taxa with the ultimate onto Venza, but there is no follow-up. Soul point for JDXL, and the fight is a potential as well. But Roscu is exploded as he dives in. First kill of the fight for Astralis, and now Venza has to go absolutely sicko mode. It's not going to happen, though. Once again, JDXL get the objective, but Astralis get the fight.
Divided, JDXL fall. 40-second death timers on Roscu and Venza. How much are Astralis going to get? They have the Baron buff. They have a heck of a lot of auto-attack damage. This could be the whole series off of a botched Dragon fight.
Cries, the last one left standing, the MVP for JDXL, the big carry top laner, the man who has done it all, seen it all before, jumped onto by Astralis talent and removed from existence. No one will respawn in time to save JDXL, and Astralis talent are forced back away. The tower's still alive, the game's not over.
They overextend under the turrets for that final kill. You think you get the gangplank, you think the series is over, but no, a lifeline for JDXL as too many people hit the floor. They get one last crack at it, but it isn't going to be any easier than the last one.
This series is delivering on levels I did not expect. Somehow, in a 1v4 scenario, Cries keeps JDXL's hopes alive.
You'll remember this as the day you almost finished the game versus Captain Jack Cries. Just about gets the job done. It is not finished in the series, but it keeps the Nexus alive. It keeps one of those turrets alive, especially against the likes of your Tryndamere and your split pushing threats. That is more than enough for now. JDXL, again, lifeline extended to them. Gold is just about even. You finally have an Infinity Edge built up onto Mrozq. You are getting item break points, but it's not enough to see yourself into a huge lead at this point. You don't have these huge scaling carries in comparison to the enemy.
Oh, my word.
Cries just about gets his barrel combo onto that wave, and that Frozen Heart, that buys him an extra second. It buys him an extra couple of tower shots hit onto the enemy's carries, and Carlson and that Kai'Sa hitting the floor, not disengaging from the turrets. That is a huge misstep from Astralis' carries.
The very first play of the game was Astralis attempting to take down Cries in the top lane in a 1v2. He gets a kill, but he gets even more in this play. 2 dead. And now JDXL going for the engage. Beautiful body slam from Kiba to force it down away, and he's thrown back into the team. The Let's Bounce just in time to keep him alive, but look at the bot lane. Carlson is split pushing to save this game, and Astralis are running down JDXL.
I think they can just about get back in time. It's not going to be even the inhibitor turret down, but you can see Carlson, the threat on the side lane. You got a half-health single Nexus turret between Tryndamere and that juicy Nexus, the one that would see Astralis through to the finals. For so much of this game, JDXL looked like they had done it, but the Rift has slowly turned more and more red. And it's not about red side, it's about the red of the Astralis stars. JDXL on the ropes, honestly. They're struggling to find their engages, struggling to coordinate with that Taric ultimate, with that single form of engage on that Zac. Mrozq is struggling to find his own fights as well. Astralis seemingly found the answer to the JDXL puzzle at the dawn of the 5th game. Potentially at the dusk of it now too, but they couldn't quite see it off the first time. Through their own making, we'll have to have another crack at that Nexus.
And yet, hope lives for JDXL. An Infernal Drake spawning in a minute's time would confer a soul onto them on a composition that can do ridiculous amounts of damage. But it's Astralis who have been making the plays. It was Astralis who were millimeters away from ending this game, ending this series, sending themselves to the final in a matchup that, well, no one thought that they had a chance in, to be frank. And it's those key players, Carlson, Senkux, Taxa, everyone actually on Astralis, pulling it out in game 5 of the series. Baron is available, and Astralis are marching forward.
And now you're actually at the point where Chrisberg on 4.5 items, almost at that full build with boots involved, can be your solo carry. Any one of these carries that goes untouched long enough, honestly on either side, can write this final chapter themselves. That's terrifying. There are so many variables you have to keep an eye on. In Astralis, I think that's why they've played it so disciplined. They're not looking for their own snap engages themselves. They're on the Dragon, going to deny JDXL their own soul. Damn, too far away for a steal. Chrisberg soloing that one out. As I said, so much damage on that carry. JDXL too late to the party. 6 dragons dead. We are not we're not conservators in this game. We are not about this whole wildlife conservation thing. JDXL going to carry on in that vein, go towards the Baron, but Astralis pinging down the mid lane. Can they force JDXL? It's just gone.
Yeah, there's no way that you can contest, and this could be disastrous actually if JDXL are caught here on the attempted exit. Carlson is alive. Taxa moving over. JDXL, they are turning around. They're going forward onto the Sejuani. Shuriken flip available to be reactivated by Senkux, but he chooses not to go forward.
Oh my gosh, both of these teams have pretty significant defensive options, and you can see that really impacting the thinking. If someone's first into the river, it is so hard to win. If you're engaging into the enemy bulked up composition, good luck with that. We are reaching almost level 18 on your 80 carries. No longer are you going to have 80 carries with level disadvantages against the solo laners. They're going to be on complete parity in their own right. They're going to be absolute neutron stars worth of weight to try and lift on the other side. It is so tense between these teams. JDXL have the Baron. They have the ability to push in with those minions, buff them up. Senkux on the flank. Dan, He's again charging up that elastic slingshot, but it is so hard to find that mark.
How much can you afford to give if you're Astralis? The Baron should mean that JDXL can go for the push. They don't quite have the waves yet. When do Astralis go enough is enough, and we want to turn this around on you? Taxa there helping to clear out the wave as the elastic slingshot charging up. Carlson on the side looking for a flank, but this inhib tower already dead, basically. Venza
Sejuani misses.
dodges away from the Sejuani ult. The Glacial Prism will not lock anyone down for at least a few more seconds, and the inhib tower stays alive. JDXL still with a minute and a half on this Baron.
I think actually at this point, you're really starting to see the negatives of this GP build. It was built so he couldn't be dove onto in the team fights easily, on the side lanes easily, and that did save him the game at the Nexus. He has been the weak side for most of this, but he doesn't have that one-shot barrel potential of the higher damage builds. He's walking up with more impunity than maybe he could, but the flash in!
From Kiba onto Cries, and the DP is tanky, and tanky enough to stay alive. Chrisberg being focused by Roscoe as Kiba is the first kill of the fight, but Sincox will turn it around. The Tarek ultimate just in time to keep Venza alive, as Dan will fall down. The AD carry from JDXL needs to do it all, and he's going to be able to. A shutdown onto Sincox, a GA for moments of time. Cries alive, Chrisberg dead, shutdown secured. JDXL, they've got a 2v2. Can they find the push?
Charleston recalling now, the stars falling from the sky. Astralis, one last chance to defend their Nexus.
Benza still low on HP. Taxa going forward. He's not finding the access though. The spears stacking up. The shutdown for Carlson, and he saves the base.
They stay aloft, they stay afloat for one more blissful moment. Death time is across the board. The game goes on.
It's the story of these top laners. Cries with a base defense, and Carlson says, I will do one better. Nothing between these teams at this point.
Carlson trying to push out mid lane for all he's worth, but this is effectively going back to net neutral. There are going to be respawns. There's going to be wave clear. Carlson, yeah, he's shuffling his wave towards the other side of the map, but Mrozku alive. Dan alive. FGG alive. There's a minute until a Soul Dragon for both teams. They have Fortooth and Nail, and on the razor's edge, it still does not know which way it is cutting. 40 minutes into this 5-game stellar clash.
And all the previous time, the 5 hours that we have spent with these teams would mean absolutely nothing to one of them in a couple of minutes' times. It all comes down to this. It doesn't matter how hard Senkox was dumpstering Mozku. It doesn't matter how much damage Venza has done in various points throughout this series. It all comes down to one more fight. Surely it all comes down to one more fight.
I don't know about you, I am so ready to see which way this dance of knives cuts. Whose heart is it plunging into at the end of it? It is almost a bare Nexus. Sejuani ult hits. It's not enough to secure the engage.
And Roscu though turns it around, and Taxa low in the backline. Dan as well. The Sejuani is dead, but Chrisberg will trade it. Junglers both falling downers. That's a massive body slam as Carlson is going into the backline. Kiba is dead. Venza is dead. Chrisberg is alive, and Astralis find the fight at their base.
I think that's it! The Astralis players, they just about outplay Cries. He is in the middle of nowhere behind enemy lines. He is 6 feet under. Teleports to the bot side. Astralis, surely this is enough. Surely this is one fight to end it all. Finally, this series can be put to rest.
The wave's taking its sweet time coming through. 10 seconds until Dan respawns. FGG. He's not a GP. I don't think he can stand, but he will do his damnedest to try. Senkux takes him out, and Carlson secures the kill. Astralis in Game 5 of the semi-final take out JDXL.
Look to the stars. The rift is red in Astralis colors. That was the perfect Game 5 between these teams. They hadn't played each other in a best of 5 this entire year, despite dancing around each other, around regular splits, around playoffs. They had never met each other in the best ofs. And it goes the distance. And every player has their chance to have their moment, to stamp their mark. And barely, just barely, it goes to Astralis Talent.
I don't know about you, Nomera, but there's only so many more words that can come out of my mouth before I lose my voice completely.
I have one last one, and it is... Ah!
Analyst Desk, what the hell have we just witnessed?
Nightmare screeching, apparently. Well, thank you so much for all that work, boys. That was a lovely best of 5, and Astralis in the end deletes JDXL from NLC history.
All I'm gonna say is that Astralis gave them the JDXL treatment. They lock in the Trindame. I am so fucking happy to see Carlsen develop so much in just a year. From On to Sejuani to Maokai to Set to Gwen to AP Mages to freaking Kama top lane into Tryndamere and carries. Like, we talk about, you know, the value and the future of top lanes in Europe. I'm so happy to see such a young 17-year-old guy develop that much. I'm just so freaking excited. He played against Cries, for crying out loud. Probably the best top laner we had in the league.
And not only that, when you just think about the story, right, I think the spring split was so disastrous for Astralis as a whole. I think many people were expecting the roster to just straight up probably be dropped, like just flat out, and maybe even a full-blown rebuild. You know, considering they're supposed to be top 3, top 4, alongside, you know, your X7, your XL as well. But yeah, like you're saying, to bounce back from that spring to where Carlsen is now as well is just so phenomenal. Now, finals of the Aurora Open. It's such an achievement for the lineup.
Yeah, we talked about that on the pre-show. It all aligns to the stars apparently. So at this point, I'll just toss it to a break before the interviews. We have Todok ready for JDXL last interview. There's a lot to digest. I'll see you soon. Don't go anywhere. we are back as it all started, Torok.
We are indeed.
Yeah, one last ride, my brother. As a coach, JDXL, what was the hardest part to prepare when you saw Astralis play throughout Aurora Open?
I think Astralis showed that they were just a really solid team fighting team, right? And they were always going to put Carlsberg on whatever team fighter they could find for him. I mean, in this game they did Tryndamere, so it was a little different, but they just showed a lot of good discipline, a lot of good fundamentals. So it was just a case of making sure that our carries could try and stand up to theirs, make sure we had a well-rounded enough ability to win the game, and make sure we didn't let it go too late, ideally, because that's where they did their best work.
When you look into the cities, obviously there was a lot to work around, and it is a rough one versus Astralis. Of all the teams, they have a lot of experience as well. What would you say was the roughest moment watching the cities?
Just losing that last game, man. Like, I think we could have won that for sure. And seeing us lose it in the fashion we did, in a way that I think most of us felt like we had the game in a very winning position. We knew how we could win from this point, and we just didn't end up closing it, and it became this really disgusting tug of war, I guess, backwards and forwards between both teams in Hibs and Nexus and everything. And it would have felt bad for either team, I think, losing that one, considering that Astralis almost ended until the tower took out two of their guys as well, right? So I think it was just one of those games that you see get away from you, and it would have been really nice to win that in order to go to the finals.
Obviously, now it's Astralis going on to the final. On the other side is Dusty versus Riddle. If you would have to pick, who do you think is going to take the entire Aurora Open before we move on in the interview?
I think Dusty will take it.
Okay. Regardless of how they played today, Astralis, you still think Dusty are going to take it?
I think Astralis did well to beat us, but I think we weren't playing in the best way we could have, and Dusty are a far stronger team than either of us. So I think that Dusty should have a clear-cut favorites position going to the final.
Torok, let's go a little bit deeper, shall we?
Sure.
This was a hell of a year, a hell of a ride for you as well. JDXL went through a lot. It was a lot of memes, a lot of promises, a lot of Toroks in the chat. What was your favorite moment of the year?
Favorite moment? Wow. I think I don't know if I can pick out something specifically, but I'll say that when we were 10-0 in the summer split, and things were coming to the point where people seemed to be clicking, and we had sort of our roster firing on all cylinders. I think that was something that was really exciting for us, and it was something that I was really excited by as well, right? That we had managed to beat everyone in the league for one part of the year at least, because we always had a loss to X7 under our belt at some point, right? And
yeah.
that was a really good time until it eventually slipped away. But I think it's one of those things, right? And there were so many highlights throughout the year, being able to be so flexible with champions, meeting all these great guys and players that I've got to work with over the year, staff as well. Had Yalen with me the entire year, but other people as well, right? And being a part of Excel was also just a big highlight for me. I guess being the last academy coach for Excel is obviously a weird honor. I'd have much rather been able to keep developing in its own sense the UK scene and what I could have brought to it at Excel. But it was something, as an experience I'm really happy with, and I wouldn't have exchanged it for the world.
If you could go back to January when you started with this adventure on JDXL, what would you tell Torok at the time?
I mean, it was 100% worth it. I think you managed to, you took a risk. So for people who don't know, I was still at university and still am throughout my entire full-time split with Excel, right? And I took a risk. I said, look, I'm gonna go for this. I'm gonna try and do both at the same time, and it'll be worth it in the long run. And I think the amount of experiences I managed to get, fantastic players I've been able to work with, and people, I think it was just something which I'm so happy for, and I hope I can continue having as good experience as this in the future, especially in League.
Now looking to your team, what would you say to your team right now, live in broadcast? So it's live, by the way, just telling you, okay? And it's live. What would you like to tell them?
I mean,
Message, yeah.
I'm just really proud of you guys, right? At the end of the day, we didn't win today, and I know it will feel like complete garbage to have lost in the way we did, right? But I think we've been through thick and thin together. Dan cries obviously from the beginning, Gary Venza later on, and then Mrozq jumping in halfway through summer. I think I'll highlight Mrozq in this sense because this is obviously the last interview I get to give, and I want to say that he did his utmost to try and come into our team, and I think he did as good a job as anyone could have expected from him going forward. And I know that he actually has a really bright future ahead of him. He just needs to tap into that potential he does have, because when he's firing on cylinders, and Roski, you know this as well, right? When you're feeling the game, when you're in the flow, when you know what you're doing, like you can be a shot caller, you can be a skirmisher, you've got the mechanical ability, right? And I really believe in him, and obviously all the rest of them to have the rest of the people on the roster to have a really great 2023. So I'm wishing them obviously all the best with their new teams.
Last one is going to be for you, Tarak. Okay. Look back into the start of the year. Do you still recall what was your objective as a coach when you started the year?
I mean, I had a couple, I guess, but are you
Okay.
gonna quote one
Do
at
you
me, or?
think- No. Oh, I could quote you all day. Don't worry. I have a lot of those things prepared, but I would like to ask you, those objectives, do you think you got to do them? And if so, what is your objective for 2023?
I mean, I think I got to show throughout the year some of the flashes of what I'd like to bring to teams, how my teams can play, like the fun we can have, the excitement that we can bring to people watching as well. And so I guess on that front, I think we achieved a lot of it, regardless of any of the ups and downs. And I think that's something good, right? So I'm happy to take that away. And I suppose going to next year, well, I mean, who knows what the future will hold, but I'm very excited for wherever I end up, show off hopefully another wonderful team of players, and showcase that to whichever league I'm in. So I'm looking forward to it.
Todok, you have that shirt. It is the last interview from JDXL, at least at NLC, that I'm aware of. I'll give you this moment to talk with the community or say anything that you want to wrap up JDXL performance at NLC.
Well, guys, and especially XL fans who turn out to watch us, I'm sorry we didn't manage to bring you the results I think all of you wanted this year. I think there was a lot of hype around what we could do as an academy side and what we could have brought to the NLC, and both regionally, to XL as a club, and then also in the EU Master Stage. At the end of the day, we did fall short on most of those, of the potential we had, and that's something that really sucks to say to people who have been following our team. But I hope we at least showed that we tried our very best to try and reach them, and gave you a lot of entertainment along the way. I guess on the fact that XL doesn't have an academy team next year, it's obviously something which for the NLC fans will be a change. XL's been here for a very long time in the NLC, and I know that they are one of the most long-standing teams in supporting UK, and when it turned into the NLC afterwards, NLC Grassroots. But I'm sure there'll be lots of great teams coming in to replace XL Academy and make sure the league is as exciting next year. And so I hope you keep enjoying what's going on, and I hope anyone who did support XL this year can find, either keep supporting the LEC team, and in the NLC find a new team to support that suits them.
Todok, from me as a host, I would say it was a pleasure watching you coach. It was a pleasure watching all those players play as well. You guys are amazing. You're stars. And regardless of where you land, it's going to be a pleasure to watch you once again. So thank you so much for all the interviews, Todok. I hope to see you soon, and I'll toss it to a break.
We
before
love you,
come back.
Tarok! Woo!
Thank you very much, Asha.
Toss it to a break, guys. Toss it. And we are back with the one and only Senkax. Congratulations for the victory. It was a rough one. How are you feeling?
I mean, it feels good to come out on top, but that last game was messy.
It was really messy. We'll get to that point in a minute. Okay. So tell me something. When you were preparing this matchup with the entire team and with the coach and all that, what was the toughest part for you as a player? What did you believe would be the worst thing or the hardest thing to face off versus JDXL?
I mean, to be honest, I didn't think too much about that. I think it was more like how we could get in there and win. I mean, they like to play very aggressive, and especially on bot side of the map, so we knew that was coming.
So tell me something. Everybody was talking about the way you played in the mid lane and all that, obviously, and you were you were a start on that one. So let me know, what was the mental state or the comms after you guys pushed in the last game? The game was yours, and out of a sudden, two guys die. Out of a sudden, I think it was Chrisberg and Taxa, and
Yeah.
you lost the push. So what was going on the comms? Bleep if you can.
I mean, it wasn't that bad actually. People just like,
Okay.
I guess we can't, then we will reset the map. It wasn't that bad, but yeah, we should probably have been able to end there. To be honest, we talked about it after and we laughed a bit about it. So,
So
it,
there was
yeah.
never a moment where you thought, huh, we might actually lose this.
Well, when they were pushing our Nexus towers like a few minutes after, then it was looking a bit dicey. But I mean, I don't know. I was just taking the game like it was, never thinking it was lost to one.
Okay. What do you have to say? Because this is important. We were debating this a lot in the desk. What do you have to say about Silas right now?
I mean, he's pretty strong. As you've seen at Worlds, there's some
Is that how you want to phrase it?
yeah. I mean, if you get good ults, like one game is obnoxious if you start snowballing, of course. Also, I think I got a good matchup, even though I blinded it the game I played. So yeah, I mean, it is definitely a strong champ, but there's some other strong mid laners right now as well.
Okay. You're moving one step closer to the top of the Aurora Open. Dusty or Riddle? Who do you want to face? You can pick. Like, tell me, who do you want to face?
I'll probably prefer facing Riddle, but I'll probably expect facing Dusty. But yeah.
And what does it mean to you? Like, if at the end of the tournament of the Aurora Open, you get to win, what does this trophy means to you? This title of the Aurora Open? Because I know in spring it didn't went the way you guys wanted. Summer, you guys upgraded so much, and you were getting to the top of it. What will it mean to you winning the Aurora Open?
Well, it would be nice to end the year on a win, especially after we didn't make EU Masters in summer and spring was a complete disaster. So yeah, I hope we can get the dub.
I don't know if I'll get the chance to talk with you at the end of the tournament, so I'm going to ask you this, Senkax. What is your plan for next year? What would you like to achieve for next year?
Well, I can't go into too much details, but I mean,
Oh,
I want to keep competing, obviously, and hopefully, yeah, do good, better than this year. I hope, because it wasn't the best year, I think, overall.
see. I mean, the community will only win if we get to see you compete even more. So thank you so much for
Oh,
this
thank you,
interview,
thank you.
Senkax.
That was so sweet, actually.
No, you're a beast, man. You're godlike. So thank you so
Thank you,
much for
thank
that
you.
one. I'm gonna say goodbye to you. You can say goodbye to the community, and then you can just leave because we're going to toss to the desk. So what do you have to say to the community?
Oh, that was a big one you hit me with there.
Finally.
I mean, thank you to all the supporters. Even though spring was quite a disaster, we still had some who kept supporting us through summer. Yeah, thank you to you, my teammates, everyone.
Keep flying, Senkax. Have a nice
Thank you,
one.
thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
You too.
Let's toss it
Bye.
to the desk. And there you go, guys. We're back in the desk. I'm gonna tell you, like, these interviews were really lovely to do. I really enjoyed talking with both of them, and we're
And
done with the cities.
you know what? It's like end of the year. A lot of
It
teams are
is.
reshuffling. They're finding new players. You know, you heard him. He's like, we didn't make you masters, so maybe the big eyes didn't get to even land on us at all. But if we do make a pretty good impression, go to the finals in the winter split, maybe we get a better offer. Maybe we even reach for the stars and grab LEC. So I think it's just so important for them, especially since not making EU masters do well here. And you see how much it meant for him being in the ULCS, being in the LEC, coming back to ERLs, trying to get back up. You see how much like emotionally it means for all these players, especially since his end of season. So much freaking uncertainty, as in where are you gonna land? Do you have to relocate? What the budget looks like? Like there's so just many things going around, and I feel for them, man. I feel for them.
This was heavy. This was heavy. Okay. We're moving on. We have Dusty versus Riddle on the other side. We talked about it. Everybody believes Dusty is gonna come on top, but if they do versus this Astralis, do you still believe this is going to be a win for Dusty, as Torak said, or it's going to be more even ground?
I still fully believe. Yeah, I'm still beg your pardon, still full camp Dusty.
Okay.
Though I will say Astralis' victory here today is, nothing short of a really great thing to see, just, for the sake of the tournament and, the storyline. I feel like Dusty, coming off the back of that EU Masters run, should, and even watching them in this tournament, should still take down Astralis if they make it over the first hurdle first, of course, in semis.
Okay. If you had to give me a number on the best of 5, what would you say?
Ooh, I mean, if it is Dusty, I would
Because it's
say
still a matchup between Riddle and Dusty, guys. Calm down. by
Mind
the
you,
way.
they're good at reverse sweeps.
So give me a number in trouble. You do the same as well. Riddle, Dusty, give me a number and then toss it to the final.
I'll let you go first, Trouble. Ladies first.
Oh,
as
Riddle,
it is.
Riddle, Dusty. I think Dusty are actually gonna go 3-0, 3-1 here. I feel like they're one of the strongest teams in the tournament if they go to the finals versus Astralis. My only concern with Astralis is that if they don't get started very early, Dusty is a team that is absolutely fantastic at team fighting and finding ways around team fighting. And I find Astralis to be maybe a little bit inferior in that department. Still good, but a little bit lower than Dusty, because Dusty was the best team fighting team that we have over in the NLC. And of course, they still have their sport in the exact same roster, so they didn't get any worse at that. So I'd say they're gonna get past Riddle for sure for Dusty. But as for the finals, I think it's gonna be a 5-game series for sure.
nice.
Ooh.
Now we're talking. Jamada.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Riddle, it's just going to be a rough series, especially if we get EU Masters Dusty coming into the series, right? I think even though, yes, they did look a little bit shaken by natives, I think that is just the nature of having watched a lot of Division 2. Natives have an ungodly high ceiling when they decide to. And I don't think it's out of the realm possibility for them to have taken a game off them in the nature that they did. So I think Dusty is still really damn strong, and I think they're probably going to 3-0 Riddle, unless, like Trouble says, Riddle really catches them off guard with some really nuanced stuff, shall we say. And I think going into Astralis, I want to say let's give it a 5-game series, but I think it's going to be a 4-game, and I think even my head is telling me Dusty. It's going to
What
be
does your
3-0.
heart tell you, Jamada? What does your heart tell you?
My heart is actually telling me Astralis. I do feel like
That was the
maybe they
DRX
can-
versus T1 final,
Oh,
like
yeah.
the brain was saying T1, the heart was saying DRX.
Yeah.
Well, we're good to go, and we're gonna wrap it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it back at home. It was a lovely series. We had lovely casters as well. Middlecott did amazing with Nymera. You guys rocked the stage. Production did it as well. And you guys at the desk, it's a pleasure to work with you again. I would like to do it, for the next year as well. Let's see what happens. But for you guys back at home, I'll see you soon for another semifinal between Riddle and Dusty. So keep climbing, and I'll see you soon.